Hey there. In today's video, we're talking all about how do you write well as a grant writer so you can get off the struggle bus and write more winning grant proposals. I'm Meredith Noble, the co-founder of Learn Grant Writing, and I am joined today by Rose Hedberg, the founder of Ideas Right Now. Rose, shall we?
Hi, yes, I'm Rose Hedberg, and I'm so excited to be here to talk about writing. So let's jump right in.
Alrighty, so you are in the right place if you're looking to gain confidence in your skills as a writer so you can spend a lot less time looking into stare space or looking at a blank page and more time actually completing your work. And obviously the most important thing that we're looking for in the essence of this training is you to feel confident in your grant proposal writing so that you are winning more grants and having a bigger impact on your community. We are known for launching careers. That's sort of our jam here at Learn Grant Writing. But what's cool about this writing training is that this is for everyone, the noobs to the super pro, anyone that is looking to up-level their writing skill and write faster with less pain. That is what we are here for.
Exactly. And how do we know that people want to level up in their writing skills? Well, because we asked. We sent out a survey and asked grant writers one question. What do you struggle with when it comes to writing? And all of that feedback informed our training today because we noticed grant writers are struggling with some very similar writing issues. Overthinking where to start, worrying about a perfect first draft, lacking the confidence they need, and saying too much. And you might be here for some similar reasons. And these struggles have very true pain points for you doing your job well. When you're overthinking where to start, that's going to build up and cause anxiety about the very task of writing. If you're worrying about a perfect first draft, well, that's going to affect your productivity. If you are lacking the confidence you need, that's going to prevent you from creating competent work on a deadline, which is so important. And if you're overloading on information, that's going to create these wordy proposals and chunky narratives. It's going to lose the reader, lose the funder. And all of these struggles come together to really point out that writing can be frustrating, but please remember, you're not born knowing this stuff. And we are here to remind you that yes, it's frustrating, but writing can also be something tangible that you create, something you can be extremely proud of. So we wanted to create this crash course in writing to help you overcome some of these struggles. We're going to answer 3 questions. How do you become a better writer? How do you write persuasively? And how do you get the most out of your character count to help you overcome some of these struggles? We're also going to introduce a case study, which is a great way for you to develop your writing skills, and you'll walk away with some top tips in editing. Lots to cover, so let's jump right in. First question, how do you become a better writer? Yes. So I work with writers one-on-one, and the first thing I try to do is gauge what sort of mindset they are bringing to the task of writing. Are they setting themselves up for success? I can do this with practice. Or are they limiting their beliefs? I've never done this. I can't do this. This is difficult. Because it's very easy for any of us to slip into a sort of state of panic when we are attempting something new or trying something that makes us feel uncomfortable. But remember, just like being a marathon runner, whatever you're training to do begins with your mindset. So same applies here when you are learning to become a better writer. You want to harbor a growth mindset. And you've probably heard this term. It is coined by psychologist Dr. Carol Dweck. She found when students believed they could get smarter, then they understood that effort was the path to make them smarter. Therefore, they put in extra time and effort, and then that led to higher achievement, which is amazing. That same concept applies to you here with writing. Because when you believe that you can write well, you understand, okay, I got to put in some effort to get there. And effort is going to help you improve your writing skills because writing well is a soft skill achievable by anyone with practice. So having that right mindset can feed your confidence, which you need, and it's also going to chip away that anxiety of writing in general. With the right mindset, what are you aiming for? What is good writing? Where's the bar? Because sometimes good writing is mixed up with the idea of elevated or flowery language, and that's not necessary or true in the field of grant writing. Good writing is 3 simple things. Good writing is fluid. That means it flows. It's not wordy or conjunctive. It's an easy read for the reader. Good writing is clear. That means you are spitting out and saying exactly what you mean to say, and there's no confusion on the part of the reader. And lastly, good writing is comprehensive. It is a complete work, and the reader will leave your piece knowing and understanding that all the questions they required you to answer have been answered. Fluid, clear, and comprehensive. And if you can follow these guidelines, it's going to help you to aim for good writing, and it's going to help you to write more winning grants in the future. The right mindset, the bar. Now, how do you transform into the ideal writer you want to be? Well, if you think about any other profession out there, think about an athlete. They take to the field. Think about a musician. They pick up their instrument. Scientists conduct experiments. All of these careers have a form of practice to help transform their skills from novice to professional. And the same concept applies to you here in becoming a better writer. I understand, though, it feels kind of awkward to say, hey, I need to go practice my writing. It's just not as common, but it's exactly what you need to be doing. So when I work with writers, I recommend that they develop a practice of endurance writing. What that means is you are committing to a certain amount of time, setting a timer of either 5 minutes, ideally 15 minutes if you can, and you're going to commit to a flow of writing for that complete amount of time. Because what you're trying to do is you are working to push through these awkward first thoughts. That's what Natalie Goldberg calls them in her great book called Writing Down the Bones. When you are over and over again writing, you're pushing through the, I don't know what to write, this is uncomfortable, and you're getting to the meat of what you actually want to say. Now, some forms of endurance writing could be that you are heading to the internet, you're just typing in writing prompts, finding something that's interesting, and that is the focus for your set amount of time. You also can consider journaling. That's just cataloging your day, what you see, not drawing too much on the far out imagination, or you could just write a letter. It's not necessarily about the content you're creating during these sessions, because what you're doing over time, these practices of endurance writing, these sessions, they are going to create a stronger muscle and a clear channel between bright ideas in your head and well-worded sentences on the page. And that's going to give you the confidence that you need to go forth, write well, and write more winning grants. Another form of practicing as a writer comes from editing. Editing is a great way for you to build trust in your ear or build trust in the gut feeling of what is good writing. And you can edit your own work. I recommend that writers, after they've written a first draft, walk away for a minimum of an hour, hopefully a couple hours if you have time to spare. Come back to your work and you'll have a more objective view of this writing. You'll be able to go through and edit where you need to. You can also reach out to a colleague or find someone online. You can edit their work, they can edit yours, and all of this is to work on developing those skills of good writing. Later in this training, we are going to talk about the top tips of editing, so hang tight, we will get there. The last form of practice in the field of writing is reading. Not only is reading fun, but it is a great way for you to absorb the rules of good writing while you're enjoying working through a text. You can go out and find books on learning to write well. You can also follow below. We have created a list of authors and books we enjoy that talk about not only learning to write well, but the craft of writing. You can read past applications, turn into your organization, review what other people have said, how they've written about your projects and organizations. Or you can be bold. You can reach out to past winners who have won from a funding agency you're interested in, send the organization an email, politely ask them if they'd be willing to share their winning proposal, of course, abstracting any sensitive information. It's worth a shot and a great way for you to read how other people have talked about their projects well, how they've written well. So to become a better writer, we've talked about how you need to have the right mindset. You need to develop a form of practice, either from endurance writing, editing, and reading. And all of this is going to help you to tackle those struggles of where to start and build in your ability to create that channel, again, between your head and your hands, what you're trying to say. Moving on, how do you write persuasively? So persuasion gets a bad rap. Politics have certainly manipulated this term. However, the term persuasion is actually something that you can use as a tool for good in the field of grant writing. Because persuasion just means you are bringing people to do or believe something. And that is certainly a power you can wield for good. Now, there's a whole field of study about persuasion or rhetoric, which is using writing to persuade the reader. And all of that really stems from the great Greek philosopher Aristotle and his book, A Theory on Civic Discourse. I don't have time here to go deep, but I will summarize 2,000 years of philosophy into the 3 principles of persuasion that Aristotle turns to. And the first one here is thinking about ethos. We will call this an appeal to character. And in grant writing, that means that you are working to demonstrate through writing that your organization understands the community and can do the work. They can follow through. They are credible. The second idea is logos, or an appeal to reason. And in grant writing, that is using your words to demonstrate a logical solution that is backed up by planned, measured outcomes. And the third aspect here would be pathos, or an appeal to emotion. And in grant writing, that is demonstrating an understanding of the problem and its effect on the community served, so the actual real people that are affected. Now, in the Pen to Polish course, video 5 on persuasion, we deep dive into the psychology behind these aspects, how you can really use them in your grant writing, giving you examples and a recipe for creating a strong why it matters. But for the purpose of this training, I want you to be able to walk away with some actual tools you can use right now in your writing. What are those tools? Well, they begin with statistics, so percentages or numbers. You can use facts as well. That is drawing from reliable websites, .edu, .gov sites, or citing professionals in the field. You can use quantifiable numbers to either show the gap that you're trying to address or the solution you're trying to deliver. You can also use objective observations. This is where you are reporting without opinion using your senses. And this is a great tool if you don't have access to the statistics or facts, but you can see the problem. An example of this would be homeowners in Cantwell, Alaska, live in health hazard homes of sunken foundations and cracked windows. Those 2 observations, sunken foundations and windows, is an objective observation, reporting without opinion. And lastly, you can use direct quotes. This is a great way to either draw from community outreach or surveys and let the community you are serving speak toward the problem or the solution. Integrating these skills of persuasion is a great way to build both your confidence and your competency in your skills as a grant writer. Moving along, how do you get the most of your character count? Yes, we all struggle when we see that a funder has asked us to reduce our big ideas into a very small amount of space, and writers worry about how they can cut out characters. But may I remind you, you need characters to cut before you can even worry about the amount that you have. So first and foremost, spit out a terrible first draft. I use the adjective terrible here because ultimately it's going to be rough when you spit it out. That's why we have a first draft. Get it out there first so that you're not slowing yourself down. Then you can go through and start to slice and reduce this copy by scrapping those fluffy words. That means you're aiming for targeting the elevated language, those 3 to 4 syllable words, and replacing them with plain language. That's where cultivate becomes create. Empower becomes help or assist. Maybe relinquish becomes let go or give up. So you are working to cut the scrappy words. You're working to cut the fluffy words. Then you're going to go through and you're really going to target the adjectives and adverbs. These are parts of speech that truly don't hold up our sentences. Remember that adjectives modify nouns or pronouns, while adverbs modify adjectives, verbs, and other adverbs. Think about your ly words: efficiently, effectively, usually, begrudgingly. Cut them out. That way you are relying on just nouns and verbs to support your content. The last thing I recommend when you're thinking about cutting characters is to just read your work out loud. I promise, again, your gut is going to know where you've been too wordy. You might even hear where you can cut out those conjunctions and or but so and reduce those compound complex sentences to more short independent clauses and declarative sentences. Another unique aspect might be reaching out to a colleague, asking if they have a few minutes to listen while you read your narrative out loud. And then afterwards, ask them to repeat back as much information as they can remember. This is a very unique way for you to kind of gauge what was important and what was missed on the reader, and you can go back and cut or adjust where you need to. So it's very important for you to understand parts of speech because that's going to give you confidence and allow you to cut where you need to. If you want more information on this, you can watch our YouTube video linked below about cutting characters on a deadline, or I highly recommend the book called The Writer's Diet by Helen Sword. Oh, love it. It's like the modern day elements of style, and it's super short, super great. So remember to spit out your first draft, cut through characters, and avoid the temptation of being overly wordy. So we've covered questions of becoming a good writer, writing persuasively, character count, but I want to go back to this transformation, why you're probably here, and talk about training. So we wanted to include here a case study for you to actually practice and enhance your writing skills through editing. This is a nice ease into practicing writing. Case studies are fantastic because we are drawing from real world examples. This is a real grant writer that was addressing and writing a proposal for a real project. And what we've done is we've taken a draft that was submitted by a great and amazing writer from the Global Grant Writers Collective. She was tasked with writing a 1,000-word proposal and needed a bit of help editing. So we took that draft and, of course, we abstracted any sensitive information and turned it into a case study for you. Then we layered in some editing tasks because remember, good writing is fluid, clear, and comprehensive. So we put in some steps for you to practice your editing. And this case study is a way for you to practice right now your writing and to do something to develop and transform into a better writer. We also wanted to make sure that you had a competency check. So we included that final deliverable so that you can benchmark your work against. And although we've anonymized names, locations, and funding amount for the privacy of the writer and the organization, this case study is a way for you to track the process from draft to final edits to a fully funded proposal. Now, after the training today, make sure that you follow the link to open this case study. It will open as a Google Doc. You can go through and save it to your drive, or we recommend that you download this file as a docx. That's going to allow you to open the file. And as you can see on the slide here, on the right-hand side, you can open this case study and hide our comments. You can work through the editing tasks. And when you're ready, you can expose those comments and compare your edits to some of our professional edits. And lastly, you can work your way through to that final part where you can see how your edits compares to how the writer edited her final draft to create a piece that was fluid, clear, and comprehensive. So that is for you to work on after this free training, but to give you a little guide and to work on your editing for your own writing, let's go over those top tips of editing right now. Remember, good writing, fluid, clear, comprehensive. So when you're editing to be a fluid piece of work, I want to urge you to remember you can use section headings. This is a great way to mirror a proposal. It also will break up narratives so the reader has an easier time reading through your work. It also does a great job at showing the reader or the funder that you have answered any necessary questions that they've put in the guideline for your LOI or your proposal. More notes on editing for fluidity: break up those long sentences, avoid over-defining and oversharing. That means in the medical field, if you're talking about diseases, reduce your language to the symptoms and their effect on the community. Make sure you're avoiding the complexity of the disease or history unless it's necessary to talking about the problem and solution. And lastly, make sure that you're using declarative sentences. You're making statements. So you're getting rid of introductory phrases like "in searching for," "in conclusion," and just get right to the point, as well as assertive language. So saying "we will," "we are," instead of "we aim," "our goal." When you're thinking about editing for clarity, number one thing I see is make sure that you are clarifying ambiguous pronouns. It and they sometimes get too far away from their reference noun, so make sure you're defining what it is or who they are. Make sure you're keeping similar information together. You are utilizing paragraphs to help the reader understand clearly what you are talking about by section. An important note on clarity: write what you mean to say. I know this sounds silly, but it happens all too often with a misplaced modifier or perhaps passive voice. The writer, you might be not saying what you intend to. For example, in the case study, the writer used passive voice and talked about how psychologists received the diagnosis when the intention of the writer was to say that psychologists gave diagnosis to parents who received them. So make sure you're going through and saying exactly what you mean to say. Lastly, just present information in a logical order to make sure it's clear. You don't want to talk about the funding before you've introduced the problem or solution, and the solution usually goes after the problem. So be clear and logical about information. Now, editing for comprehension, remember we define this as how do you create a complete piece of work? And really, when you're editing for comprehension, you are checking that the writer or you as the writer has answered all the interrogative questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Specifically, the how is how does or how will your solution help? And that why, make sure you're explaining, why does this matter? Why is it urgent now? So going through, making sure all of these questions have been answered. And of course, we want to talk about grammar because you want a complete piece of writing. You want to show the funder you've been meticulous and edited, because if you're being sloppy with your grammar, you are losing the confidence of the funder that you can competently deliver on your solution. So top grammar tips I see: make sure when you're using acronyms, you're defining them first. An example of learn grant writing, parentheses LGW, is awesome. So I've introduced the acronym, stands for Learn Grant Writing. Now I can continue writing using the acronym LGW. Avoid mispunctuation. You can use Grammarly or any editing software to make sure you're using commas specifically correctly. If your organization wants to use the Oxford comma, fantastic, just be consistent. And of course, if there's any grammatical guidelines from the funder, follow those first and foremost. I use APA style for my grant writing, which means that when I am talking about numbers 1 through 10, I use word form. Instead of the numeral 1, I spell out ONE. And lastly, a note, not really grammatical, but remember, it is so important to use plain language where you can. You're not trying to flex your big elevated writing muscles. You're trying to deliver a message. So plain language is super important. Okay, these are your top tips for editing. Woohoo! You are feeling confident and prepared, but I do recognize that was a lot of information to absorb in a short amount of time. Your brain is pulsing with new ideas, but perhaps you're feeling just a teensy bit overwhelmed. So I want to invite all of you to take a deep breath. Exhale. And you remind yourself that wherever you are on this journey to learning to write well is okay. You are not born knowing this stuff. I just want to emphasize that over and over again. I've had years to learn this and formal training, as well as a bunch of passion, like a lot of passion about the written word. And I want to tell you just a short story here of how I learned to write well and gained my confidence, how that really came from working with other writers. So the story really begins when I graduated from university. I was feeling confident. I had a degree in English and creative writing, but no real path of what that meant. So I decided to travel instead, which was fantastic. I ended up settling in a place called Da Nang, Vietnam. Amazing, wonderful. Was settling in to get back to what being a writer meant. And I realized I was struggling with a lot of anxiety about the blank page, and I was procrastinating so much. Now, at the time, I knew a few things about myself. I knew that I was a very community-based person and that I needed accountability. So I applied that to my path of becoming a better writer. I put up a post in my community on Facebook, and I invited other writers to come write with me at a cafe on a certain date. I headed to the cafe on that date. I had my journal, my pen, and I was ready to write, sat down and waited, and no one showed up. Now, luckily, I did not give up. I had a friend reach out and say, hey, why don't you consider creating a theme for this and give people a little more purpose to writing? Great idea. Posted again, said what the theme would be, come write with me for an hour. The following week, a few people showed up. And the week after that, a few people showed up, but people weren't returning. I wasn't really generating what I think all of us were looking for. It was not just a purpose for writing, but a path. How do we all get from an idea we have to an actual finished draft, and how do we enjoy the journey? And so I thought about this a lot and I tried out a structure for a workshop. So I started with thinking about, let's do a warm up, get our brains in the mode of writing, growth mindset. And then I added in different compounding writing exercises that grew in increment of time until our last activity was a 15-minute themed writing prompt. And I rounded all of that out in the workshop with an opportunity for individuals to share. And as you can see in this photo, these are the amazing people that came and returned week after week and year after year to come write with me, which was incredible. And so I did start this community with the purpose of just having accountability, but the workshop really grew into a space to develop writing skills. Because I noticed after a while, especially year after year and 4 years of writing, 160 different workshops later, I understood that we were doing more than just writing stories. I actually could see, especially when writers were coming not just once or twice, but a year or 2 years, that some skills were forming, some muscles were forming. Number one, writers were developing a confidence in approaching writing tasks that were spontaneous. They had no time to prep. I also noticed that there was a skill set forming of individuals could bring their stories, these spontaneous first drafts, into a close or a story arc in just a timed 15-minute writing session, which is incredible. And the last thing I really noticed that over time, individuals were less worried about this perfect first draft, and they were willing to sit down, write a draft, and have the courage to share it in a group of strangers. And what this really helped me to discover during that time and now running this workshop in Morocco, where I live, is that a habitual practice of endurance writing leads to stronger writing muscles, plain and simple. And that's why I use this method and I help other writers to engage in this method to develop their writing skills. So that's my journey of becoming a confident writer. But I do want to acknowledge that there's another great writer in this webinar. Let's turn now to Meredith. What are some methods out there of learning to write well, and how did you learn to write well?
Rose, you asked a great question. I learned through brute force, a lot of practice, and then finally wising up a bit and learning about other tools available to ease the process of writing. I think one of my prouder moments as a writer was producing this book in 6 days, cover to cover. And honestly, the other half, the tools in my toolbox, I learned from you. So I've written over $45 million in grants. I've taught over 4,000 grant writers how to write grants as well. So really understand the process, the recipe behind grant writing. But I never really identified as a super, super strong writer because I also struggled with just going the self-taught route. And I think we all are self-taught writers on some level, but this doesn't necessarily leave us feeling very confident that we're doing it the right way. I know I then turned to Grammarly, and it's a great tool. We certainly really love this software. If you haven't used it before, it's great, but it doesn't help you think through the actual content of your grant proposal. Is it persuasive or not, etc. The other thing I've seen is, man, it could just result in long, painful hours. I have worked with a grant writer, and one in particular, and I remember her just saying, I am a slow writer and I have to work long and late hours of writing. That's the only time it comes to me. And so if you've accepted that on some level, we're here to try to push back on that and let you know there's actually a much less painful route. Because if you're thinking, one or many of those solutions have been your solutions, here is the good news. Writing is a muscle. It's a skill. You're not born with it. It's something you develop, and you can and will write with confidence and ease by learning a few new strategies that are beyond just going at it the self-taught hack job route. Okay, so how this all came to be, for a little bit of background context, we listened to our community in the Global Grant Writing Collective, and there was a lot of conversation around not really feeling super confident about the actual art of writing. And so what we ended up doing there, because we're a big fan of being a platform for lots of experts, no one person can know it all. Like I said, I was the self-taught hack job writer. I don't feel like I'm a good writer, but I don't understand a lot of the mechanics and strategy. So that was what led us to Rose. So we could work with her to actually put together a writing specific training for grant writers, which does not exist anywhere else.
Exactly. And learning to write well and say what you mean in grant applications is very important. This Pen to Polish course is a 9-module video training. It's going to help you to gain the confidence that you need in your writing through prompts and work to benchmark against. The way we've structured it is truly rooted in that all too cliche practice makes perfect, but it is something that is true. So we provide model examples as well as writing assignments that are going to help you to learn to write productively. We've also incorporated 3 assignments that are going to help you to create your own writing portfolio. We've structured it in 2 parts. So the first part, videos 2 through 6, they are instructional videos. They're going to layer in the foundation of what is good writing, how you develop your skills, or if you're already a writer, it's a great refresher and polishing of what you know. Video 7 through 9, that's going to be your case studies, and they will feature 2 organizations with real grant-related deliverables as your assignment. Let's take a sneak peek into what these videos look like. After you meet your co-instructors, Christina Barr and myself, we'll jump right into the basics of writing in video 2. This is a crash course in parts of speech and understanding the ability of mastering these basic skills, how that's going to help you in your future writing, especially when you need to cut out characters or reduce your sentences. Video 3 is all about your writing practice. We are going to deep dive into the mindset of why writing is so darn difficult. And from this video, you're going to learn to develop a writing environment that fits you, and it will help you to overcome that fear of the blank page and be more productive. We're going to move right into redefining again, what is good writing? Yes, it is a soft skill achievable by anyone, even with 0 experience in writing or editing, and it'll help you to conquer this feeling and this knowing that you can write well. Video 5, that is going into persuasion. So building on the surface level ideas of what we talked about today, ethos, pathos, logos, showing you model examples, giving you a structure of how you can write persuasively, specifically for a strong why it matters statement. Rounding out part 1 is video 6, and this is storytelling and grant writing. Yes, we know that grant writing can be really dense and technical, but there are some aspects or areas that you can introduce voice. So we show you how storytelling can be sourced from your organizations for objective observations or direct quotes. We even give you 4 copy and paste hooks that you can use when you're writing a strong letter of inquiry. Video 7 is where you're going to meet Christina Barr, who is an amazing grant writer and a career lawyer. She is going to talk about the importance of case study in your journey to writing well, and also give you a step-by-step guide on writing a sound letter of inquiry. In video 8, this is where you're going to meet your organizations that you'll be working for to develop your deliverables. So you will be tasked to complete an LOI, a power prospectus, and answer a grant narrative question. And lastly, in video 9, this is where Christina is going to break down those model deliverables, deconstructing how they are pieces of good writing. And this is a very unique opportunity for you of a self-paced online course to have a competency check for your work. And this is going to help you to create those portfolio examples. Now, coming away from this 9-module training, you're going to have a tailored writing practice that is for high productivity. You'll have writing techniques that you can mirror in your grant applications. You also get 5 writing templates that you can use in your grant writing, specifically 1 for an LOI. And lastly, when you are done with these assignments, there are going to be 3 strong samples, writing samples for your own portfolio. We know that this course is full of great information and examples, but don't just take it from us. We reached out to Coach Shay. Thank you. Here she is sharing her 2 cents on how the Pen to Polish course helped develop her skills as a writer.
Before taking Pen to Polished, I would say that I considered myself to be a fairly decent writer. I'm an English major, I've won grants, I've written press releases and other pieces of copy or content, so I assumed that my writing must be pretty good, right? So when I went into the course, I think I went in feeling that it would just be a nice refresher for me. It had been a while since I've been out of college, so it'll be nice. And let me tell you, I was wrong, just flat out wrong. I absolutely needed this course. And I think what it really comes down to is the way that it reframed how I thought about what I was writing. And as a result, I was able to strengthen really whatever it was that I put to paper. So there were things like, how to weave persuasion into my writing, practical things, right? Like how to appeal to reason or emotion, how to actually do that, or how to add life to my writing so that I can effectively tell the story of those that are directly impacted by the project or the program that I'm working on. I even noticed a difference in the way that I communicated with my own clients. And I would say many aspects of my business were enhanced simply because I became a better communicator by learning how to write well. And without learning how to write well, you really do run the risk of continuing to operate in mediocrity, which is what I was doing without even realizing it. So I'm so thankful for Pen to Polish because I can now offer so much more to my clients, so much more to the communities that are directly affected by my work, but also the personal satisfaction of knowing that I am no longer a mediocre writer.
Thank you, Shay. And as she says, if you want to break the mediocrity of writing, take action and write better, because you can overcome that fear around not writing well. In this course, you are going to produce portfolio writing samples, real writing that you created, and you're going to emerge confident in your grant writing skills. So if you are ready to level up and learn even more than you did in today's free training, we'd love to have you in the Pen to Polish course. Meredith, I'm going to pass it back to you. What is the investment and where can future rockstar writers enroll today?
Great question. The answer is easy peasy. You could be a better writer by this afternoon. Okay, so below you'll see links. There are two options. You can buy the course right now. You'll have lifetime access for $750, or you could break it up so it's $250 a month for 3 months. That's your payment plan. Remember that below every video, you can ask questions, and that's where Coach Rose is going to be able to give you personalized support. If you've got something you're stumped on, ask it there. You're going to get her feedback. I mean, the cool thing is you can literally be a better writer this afternoon. We don't make you wait, only open it a couple times a year, blah, blah, blah. You can literally just get in and get on with it right away. However, before you go ham and go get Pen to Polish, be aware, if you want to join us in the Global Grant Writing Collective, you can buy Pen to Polish at any time later for 50% off. So the total cost for that course is $375 instead of the $750. If you decide you want to join the collective right now and have Pen to Polish, have it all in your library right off the bat, you would join the collective, and then the next page would be all about Pen to Polished. And in case you aren't familiar with the collective, it is a professional program to launch your career as a grant writer. You have course curriculum, you earn your certificate as a grant writer, you have coaching support and community. You can learn a lot more about that. It's a whole separate video. I will link that below. But the essence is this: it's for those of you that are looking for fulfilling work, you want to make a difference in your community and architect more freedom into your lifestyle. All right, so you can learn more at learngrantwriting.org/writing-class, or the links will be available below. Have questions still? All good. Reach out at info@sendworks.org. Send us a DM on Instagram at learngrantwriting. Know that if this resonated with you, we would love to have you. Thank you again for coming today.
Thanks for joining us today. It was a pleasure to chat about writing. Can't wait to see you in our course.